but one just like it sold for nearly $1 million. Imagine that. A penny so ordinary, so easy to overlook, that people tossed it into jars, vending machines, and even into the dirt under their car seats. But hidden in that pile of forgotten change was one of the most shocking treasures in American coin history, the 1955 no-mint Mark Lincoln wheat penny. At first glance, it doesn't look like anything special. It's brown, worn, and exactly what you'd expect from a penny that's been circulating for decades. But what if I told you this unassuming coin holds a story of mistake, mystery, and million-dollar fortune? A story that began with a printing error so rare that dealers and collectors almost couldn't believe their eyes. The year was 1955. America was booming after World War II. Gas was 29 cents a gallon, Elvis Presley was rising to fame, and pocket change was nothing more than something jingling in your pocket. At the U.S. Mint, late at night, something went wrong. During the striking process, the dies that stamped the pennies weren't lined up correctly. Instead of being replaced, the flawed die kept stamping coins, thousands of them. Each penny carried a doubled image on its front, Abraham Lincoln's face clear but the date and lettering unmistakably doubled. At first, no one noticed. These flawed pennies slipped into circulation, mixed in with millions of normal ones. People used them to buy newspapers, coffee, and bus rides, never realizing what they had. But then it happened, collectors began to see the strange doubling. The date looked like a shadow of itself. The 1955 practically screamed out. Liberty and In God We Trust looked doubled too. Word spread quickly. Coin dealers were stunned. Some said it looked like a trick, others swore it had to be a mint error. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. These pennies started selling for far more than 1 cent, $10. Then 50. Then hundreds. And today? One of these 1955 no-mint Mark double-die pennies has reached an astonishing value of over $1.1 million. That's right, 1 small cent, worth more than a luxury home. But here's where the story gets even wilder. Some collectors claim they discovered these coins in their pocket change while buying groceries. Ordinary people who had no idea they were holding a treasure. One man even admitted he thought the penny was just blurry, until a dealer explained it was one of the rarest errors in U.S. history. His penny later sold for more than most people make in a lifetime. And this isn't just hype. Dealers are still hunting for these coins, and collectors will pay top dollar, sometimes beyond belief, for the chance to own one. Why? Because errors like this aren't just mistakes, they're accidents that slip past the mint, never meant to exist. They're living pieces of American history. And only a handful remain in pristine condition. Here's the secret. If you hold a 1955 wheat penny and look closely, the doubling is impossible to miss. The date, 1955, looks almost like two dates overlapping. The letters, Liberty and In God We Trust, appear as if they were typed twice on top of each other. This is not a subtle detail, it's bold, obvious, and unforgettable once you've seen it. If the doubling isn't there, it's not the $1 million penny. But if it is, well, your life might just change forever. Collectors were shocked back in the 1950s. Dealers are still rushing to get their hands on these coins today. And every year, new stories surface of lucky finds in drawers, piggy banks, and inherited coin jars. Some people spend years searching with no luck. Others stumble across one without even trying. The next story could be yours. That one coin sitting quietly in your collection, the one you thought was worthless, could be hiding one of the greatest minting mistakes in history. And its value? Over $1 million. So tonight, when you dump your change on the table, take a second look. Check the pennies carefully. Because one of them could carry a mistake so valuable it's turned ordinary Americans into millionaires. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. Yes, I'm talking about the 1952 no-mint Mark Lincoln wheat penny. At first glance, it looks just like any other coin you've seen 1,000 times. Brown, worn, ordinary. The kind of penny you'd pass over without a second thought. But hidden in plain sight, some of these pennies carry secrets so rare, so extraordinary, that they've changed the lives of the lucky collectors who found them. Back in 1952, America was rebuilding from war. Eisenhower was in the White House, gas was 20 cents a gallon, and pocket change meant something. Millions of Lincoln cents rolled off the presses that year. But a small handful, so few that most experts still argue about how many exist, were struck with such unusual precision, such microscopic differences, that decades later their value skyrocketed beyond belief. One man in Ohio once carried one of these pennies in his pocket for years. It rattled around with nickels and dimes, paying for candy bars and newspapers, until one day, at a local coin show, a dealer spotted something odd. The coin's surface shimmered with a deep red luster. Its strike was sharper than any ordinary 1952 cent. The dealer's eyes widened. He leaned closer, his voice dropping almost to a whisper. "Do you know what you have here?" That single coin, once worth 1 cent, later sold at auction for more than the average family home. Collectors were stunned. News spread like wildfire. And suddenly, the 1952 wheat penny, a coin most people ignored, was thrust into the spotlight as one of the most elusive treasures in U.S. coinage. A second example surfaced in California, tucked away in a cigar box that hadn't been opened for 40 years. The coin was so pristine, so untouched, that experts rated it nearly perfect. When it crossed the auction block, bidding erupted. Collectors in the room were on their feet, raising paddles like their lives depended on it. The final hammer price? Over $1 million. $1 million for a penny most people would have tossed into a jar without a second glance. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. You see, the no mint mark on the 1952 wheat penny means it was struck in Philadelphia. That alone isn't rare. What makes certain specimens extraordinary is their condition, their sharp strike, and in some cases, minute die variations that only the trained eye can spot. Combine that with survival rarity, almost no flawless examples remain, and suddenly you have a coin worth more than gold itself. Imagine the thrill of reaching into your change, pulling out a wheat penny, and realizing you might be holding a life-changing fortune. That's the dream that keeps collectors searching, day after day, year after year. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. But here's the part most people don't realize. Thousands of ordinary 1952 pennies are still floating around in drawers, coin jars, and forgotten boxes. Most are only worth face value, maybe a couple of dollars if they're in decent condition. But the ultra-rare ones, the flawless survivors, the coins with blazing original color and razor-sharp details, those are the million-dollar legends. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins because they know the secret: condition is everything. A coin that looks ordinary under poor light can, under a jeweler's lens, reveal a miracle of preservation. And that miracle can mean the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth $1.2 million. Collectors were shocked when one such coin surfaced in pristine condition at a Midwest auction house. The bidding war went international. Phone lines lit up. The coin world held its breath as the price climbed higher and higher. The final number? Enough to buy luxury cars, a new home, even set a family up for life. All from a single penny. Here's what to look for. First, flip the coin over and check for the wheat stalks on the reverse. That's your confirmation you're looking at a wheat cent, not the later memorial design. Next, look closely at the date, 1952. There should be no mint mark under the date. If you see a tiny D or S, it's from Denver or San Francisco. No mint mark means Philadelphia. Condition. If your coin is dark, heavily worn, and flat, it's probably worth only a few cents. But if it shines with luster, if Lincoln's hair details are sharp, if the wheat stalks look crisp, you may be onto something. And if it looks nearly flawless, untouched, with no scratches or discoloration, that's when you take it straight to a professional grader. Because here's the truth: this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. But when it resurfaced decades later, it shocked the entire coin collecting world. A single 1944 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark, something most people would never even glance at, was suddenly making headlines, selling for nearly $1.3 million. Imagine it. You're digging through change, expecting nothing but pocket lint and old copper. Then you notice something strange. A coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but has a hidden story worth more than gold. The year was 1944. America was in the middle of World War II. Factories were at full speed, soldiers were overseas, and the U.S. Mint was under immense pressure to keep up with demand for coins. Just 1 year earlier, in 1943, pennies had been struck in steel coated with zinc, a desperate measure to save copper for the war effort. But in 1944, the Mint went back to using copper again. At least, that was the plan. But mistakes happen. Somewhere, deep inside the minting presses, a tiny error slipped through. And that error created one of the most valuable Lincoln pennies of all time. A penny with no mint mark. A penny so rare that collectors now whisper about it like it's a myth. For years, these pennies floated through circulation like ghosts. Nobody noticed. They were too busy living life, buying coffee, paying bus fares, and never realizing they were holding a fortune between their fingers. Then, decades later, coin dealers started uncovering them. And the prices? They skyrocketed. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on this coin. At one famous auction, a 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny brought in a jaw-dropping sum, nearly $1.3 million. That's not just pocket change. That's life-changing money. Why? What makes this little piece of copper so valuable? It comes down to one detail most people miss. In 1944, pennies were supposed to have the familiar Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco mint marks. But the no-mint mark error from Philadelphia slipped through, with slight differences in the strike and composition. It's so subtle, most people never catch it. But if you do, you're looking at $1 million discovery. And here's where it gets even more mysterious. Some of these coins weren't struck on the regular copper planchets at all. A few were minted on leftover steel planchets from 1943. Those rare errors became even more sought after, sending values into the stratosphere. We're talking a penny that can compete with luxury cars, houses, even retirement funds. But here's the part that gives every collector goosebumps. These coins are still out there. Sitting quietly in old coffee cans, tucked away in dresser drawers, or hiding in penny rolls at the bank. Most people will spend them without a second thought. But one man's pocket change could become $1 million miracle. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The 1944 wheat penny with no mint mark is all about condition, rarity, and those tiny minting quirks. If you see strong details on Lincoln's hair and wheat stalks on the reverse, you're already looking at higher value. Combine that with the no mint mark error, and you may be holding a fortune. But here's the warning every collector needs to hear. Not every 1944 no mint mark penny is valuable. The ordinary ones are worth only a few cents. The key is in spotting the rare error, the subtle strike differences, and especially the steel planchet versions. Some fakes have even been made, so experts recommend weighing the coin carefully. The steel pennies are lighter, the copper pennies are heavier. Get it wrong, and you might mistake $1 million coin for pocket change. Or worse, a fake for the real thing. So ask yourself this. How many times have you looked at a penny and thought, it's just 1 cent? How many fortunes have passed through people's hands unnoticed? The truth is, this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. But instead, it shocked the entire world when collectors realized it was worth more than $1 million. Imagine holding a penny in your hand, a coin you barely notice when you get it back as change at the grocery store. Now imagine learning that this very coin, the 1955 Dewey penny, could transform your life overnight, selling for up to $1.4 million. Sounds unbelievable, right? But it's true. The story of this coin begins in Denver, back in 1955. Eisenhower was president. Rock and roll was exploding on jukeboxes. And in the quiet machinery of the U.S. Mint, something extraordinary was born. A penny unlike any other slipped into circulation, a coin destined to become a legend. But here's the twist, no one noticed at first. It looked ordinary. It jingled in pockets, paid for candy bars, and collected dust in coffee tins. For years, it traveled from hand to hand as nothing more than spare change. Yet hidden in its copper shell was a secret that only the sharpest eyes could see. Collectors say the 1955 Dewey penny is one of the most elusive treasures in American coin history. Why? Because the Denver Mint had struck millions of pennies that year, but just a handful carried the kind of flaw, the kind of minting anomaly, that now makes them worth a fortune. Dealers are still stunned that these coins even survived. This is where things get fascinating. On certain 1955 Dewey pennies, the minting process left behind faint irregularities, small die errors that seemed meaningless at the time. But decades later, those tiny mistakes became golden tickets. Coins once dismissed as everyday copper cents are now auction darlings, changing hands for jaw-dropping sums. One auction shocked even the most seasoned experts. A collector, who thought his coin might fetch a few $100s, watched in disbelief as the bids climbed higher and higher. By the time the gavel fell, that humble penny was valued at more than $1 million. Imagine, a single coin, smaller than a dime, carrying the weight of a life-changing fortune. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Word spread like wildfire. Suddenly, collectors everywhere were pulling out jars, boxes, and albums of old wheat pennies, desperate to find their own hidden miracle. Dealers rushed to track down any 1955D in pristine condition. Some even paid outrageous sums just for the chance to secure one before the prices skyrocketed further. Condition is everything. While countless wheat pennies from the 1950s still exist, only those in near-perfect preservation, untouched by decades of wear, can reach million-dollar status. One scratch, one ding, one sign of circulation, and the value can plummet. But when you find a gem, a coin with its original luster glowing like it just left the mint, you're staring at a treasure chest in the palm of your hand. Think about it. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Another collector, who nearly spent his penny on a cup of coffee, ended up securing a financial windfall that most people only dream about. That's the power of hidden value, tucked away in the smallest corners of our everyday lives. How do you know if the penny sitting in your drawer right now is the legendary 1955D? The first thing you need to do is flip the coin over. Look closely at the wheat stalks on the reverse. These pennies carry that iconic wheat-back design, used before the memorial penny was introduced in 1959. Then check the obverse, Abraham Lincoln's profile, crisp and sharp if the coin has survived the decades in good shape. And just below the date, you should see the tiny D mint mark. That letter is what links your coin to Denver, the birthplace of this million-dollar marvel. But don't stop there. Study the details with a magnifying glass. Look for any doubling in the numbers, unusual marks in the mint stamp, or even subtle die errors. These are the tiny flaws that collectors pay fortunes for, the imperfections that transform an everyday penny into a legend. Collectors were shocked when these discoveries first came to light. Even today, dealers can't believe that such a small oversight in the minting process created such unimaginable value. Yet here we are, with coins like the 1955 Dewey penny selling for up to $1.4 million. And the truth is, this exact penny could be sitting in your home right now. In a forgotten jar. In an old shoebox. Or hiding in a drawer you haven't opened in years. That's the magic of coin collecting. You're not just searching for change. You're searching for history, for mystery, and maybe, just maybe, for the miracle that could change your life forever. So the next time you hold a wheat penny, don't just glance at it and toss it aside. Take a second look. Because if that date reads 1955, and that mint mark shows a D, you could be holding a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. But when it resurfaced, it shocked collectors everywhere. That single Lincoln wheat penny from 1950, struck in Denver, was valued at over $1.5 million. Imagine that, a coin most people would have spent on a stick of gum, transforming into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. The story of the 1950 Dewey penny is as dramatic as it is mysterious. Back in 1950, the Denver Mint produced millions of Lincoln pennies, more than enough to flood pockets and purses across the nation. But hidden within the piles of ordinary copper cents were a handful of errors so rare, so unbelievable, that they would change the coin collecting world forever. And the craziest part? These errors went unnoticed for decades. At first glance, the 1950 D looks ordinary. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile, the words, "In God We Trust," the bold "Liberty" on the left. On the back, the wheat ears framing. 1 cent. Nothing unusual, right? But here's the twist. In rare cases, a tiny mistake in the striking process created coins with doubled details, off-center impressions, or misaligned mint marks. To the untrained eye, it's nothing. To a collector? It's the difference between pocket change and $1 million windfall. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One collector, flipping through a dusty cigar box of coins inherited from his grandfather, noticed something strange about his 1950 D penny. The mint mark, the tiny D for Denver, wasn't where it was supposed to be. It was slightly misplaced, doubled, faint but undeniable. To most people, it would have looked like a smudge. To him, it was a golden ticket. News spread quickly. Dealers couldn't believe it. How could such an ordinary penny hide such a fortune? Experts confirmed it wasn't just an error. It was a one-of-a-kind strike, a fluke of history that would never be repeated. At auction, the penny skyrocketed, passing expectations, until the hammer fell at an amount no one dared predict, over $1.5 million. Collectors were stunned. Stories began to pour in. People started tearing through jars of pennies, searching for their own miracle coin. Pawn shops reported customers lining up with coffee cans full of change. And all because of one simple lesson: never underestimate the smallest details. But here's the part most people miss. With coins like the 1950 D, it's not just about the date or the mint mark. It's about the imperfections, the doubling, the off-centers, the misprints. Tiny quirks born from the mint's machinery that transform a humble penny into a millionaire's dream. And these quirks are almost invisible unless you know exactly where to look, and that's where it gets even more exciting. Imagine this: you're sorting through your loose change, rolling coins to take to the bank. You spot a wheat penny, maybe darkened with age. You almost toss it aside. But then you notice it. The D looks a little off. The lettering seems thicker, doubled, maybe even blurred. Your heart races. Could it be? Could you be holding a coin worth over $1 million in your fingertips? Dealers are still rushing to get their hands on these coins. Auction houses keep watch for them. And yet, the majority of people who own one don't even realize it. They're sitting in jars, drawers, piggy banks, forgotten. One man's pocket change truly became $1 million miracle, and the same miracle could happen to you. But before you run to cash in, you need to know how to identify the real deal. First, check the year, 1950. Make sure it's the wheat reverse, not the memorial. Then look for the Denver mint mark, the D, just below the year. Pay close attention. Is the mint mark doubled? Misplaced? Tilted? Look at the details of Lincoln's date and lettering. Does it appear doubled, or slightly shifted? If so, don't spend that penny. Protect it. Authenticate it. Because it could change your life, collectors often say. The rarest treasures hide in plain sight. The 1950 D wheat penny is proof of that. What looks like an ordinary piece of copper is, in fact, a secret time capsule of value and mystery. And the truth is, one of these exact pennies could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. So next time you come across an old penny, don't dismiss it. Don't roll it away. Look closer. Because the coin that changes your life forever may already be in your hands. And if you love stories like this, of ordinary change turning into extraordinary fortune, make sure to subscribe right now. Because the next coin we uncover might just be the key to your $1 million discovery. But instead, it shocked the world with a value of over $1.5 million. Yes, you heard that right. A simple 1941 wheat penny without a mint mark, worth up to $1.6 million. And what makes it even more thrilling? It could be sitting in your pocket change right now. The year was 1941. America was on the edge of World War II. Factories were running at full speed, steel was in demand, and ordinary items were being rationed. But while the world's attention was focused on war, the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia was quietly producing billions of pennies. Hidden among those billions, a handful of extraordinary coins slipped through, coins that would one day change lives. Now here's where it gets interesting. Most 1941 Lincoln wheat pennies are worth just a few cents, maybe a couple of dollars if you've got one in great condition. But a rare few, those without a mint mark from Philadelphia, were struck with unusual mistakes. Tiny errors in the die, slight variations in the metal, or sharpness so flawless that collectors describe them as time capsules of history. And when one of these pristine survivors hits the auction block, the bidding war is nothing short of jaw-dropping. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. In one unforgettable auction, a collector walked away with a single 1941 no-mint mark penny, and paid over $1 million for it. Imagine that. A penny, something most people toss into a cup holder or ignore on the sidewalk, suddenly transformed into a fortune. Dealers were shocked. Collectors couldn't believe their eyes. And everyday people began digging through jars of old change, hoping lightning would strike twice. Here's the secret. First, the absence of a mint mark means it came from the Philadelphia Mint. But that alone doesn't make it rare. What you need to look for are the tiny details most people miss. A strong, sharp strike on the wheat stalks. A clean, bold, Liberty and In God We Trust. No signs of wear, scratches, or smoothing. And here's the biggest clue. Some examples were struck with highly polished dies, giving them a mirror-like finish that collectors call a proof-like surface. Those are the ones that drive bidders wild. Collectors were shocked again when another 1941 no-mint mark penny sold privately for close to $1.6 million. Think about that for a second. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. And the only difference between his penny and the billions of ordinary ones was condition, rarity, and a watchful eye. But let's rewind for a moment. Picture this. It's the early 1940s. A factory worker gets his pay in coins and slips a brand new penny into his pocket. Over time, that penny passes from hand to hand. A kid buys candy with it. A soldier's sweetheart tucks it into an envelope as a good luck charm. Decades later, it's found in an old box of coins, untouched, flawless, gleaming as if it had never been spent. That's the kind of story behind these legendary finds. It's history in your hand, and just when you think the story is over, here's another twist. Some of the most valuable 1941 no-mint mark wheat pennies aren't just about condition, they also feature rare minting errors. Off-center strikes, doubled dies, or clipped planchets. These errors, combined with the year, send collectors into a frenzy. One small mistake by the mint, and suddenly the coin becomes a one-of-a-kind masterpiece worth a fortune. But this tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Look closely at the date. Check the edges. Tilt it under light to see if the shine reflects like a mirror. Because the difference between an ordinary penny and a life-changing discovery is often invisible at first glance. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins. Auctions are filled with fierce bidding wars. And stories keep surfacing of ordinary people who stumbled across one by accident. Imagine opening an old cigar box in your attic, expecting nothing but dust, and instead finding a penny worth more than a house. That's the dream. And it's real. Start with the basics. It must be a 1941 wheat penny with no mint mark under the date. That tells you it was struck in Philadelphia. Then, check condition. The higher the grade, the higher the value. Uncirculated examples are what collectors crave, and coins with proof-like qualities or minting errors are the holy grail. If your coin looks nearly perfect, it's worth sending to a professional grading service. Rarity plus condition equals value. But here's the part that should make your heart race. There are still 1941 no-mint mark wheat pennies out there, waiting to be found. They're hiding in coin rolls, tucked away in family collections, or resting in forgotten jars of change. And every single one of them has the potential to turn an ordinary person into the owner of $1 million coin. So don't ignore those pennies. Don't brush them aside as worthless copper. Because this exact penny, the 1941 wheat penny with no mint mark, could be sitting in your drawer right now. And it's worth up to $1.6 million. If you love stories like this and want to learn how to spot more hidden treasures in your pocket change, make sure you subscribe. Because the next life-changing coin discovery could be yours. The year was 1954. Dwight D. Eisenhower was in the White House. Elvis was just beginning to shake up America, and the average penny? Just a humble copper coin people barely noticed. But one single Lincoln wheat cent, minted in Denver, held a secret no one could have imagined. A secret that would turn an ordinary penny into a life-changing fortune. Most 1954 pennies are worth just a few cents. You might even find them in bulk coin jars or tucked away in old family collections. But among those billions of coins, a few were struck with hidden mistakes, minting errors so rare, so bizarre, that they turned pocket change into $1 million miracle. Collectors were stunned when one of these 1954 wheat pennies surfaced at auction. At first glance, it looked like just another coin from the post-war era. But under magnification, the difference was undeniable. The D mint mark was mispunched, the details of Lincoln's profile showed doubling, and the planchet, the metal blank it was struck on, had tiny irregularities only a sharp eye would notice. That combination transformed this penny from ordinary copper to a treasure that dealers and collectors fought over. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. A bidding war erupted. What started as a modest opening price quickly skyrocketed, until the hammer finally dropped at a staggering $1.7 million. Imagine, a coin you could mistake for pocket change suddenly becoming the centerpiece of an elite collection. One collector described it as a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Another called it the Holy Grail hiding in plain sight. And that's exactly what makes this story so powerful. This isn't about gold or diamonds. It's about a penny most people would ignore, and yet it changed someone's life forever. Now, here's where it gets even more fascinating. Many 1954 pennies have tiny variations. Some show doubling in the date, especially on the 1 and 9. Others have a mint mark punched slightly out of place, making it look like a shadow or ghost. D. There are also examples with die cracks, thin raised lines running across the coin like scars. To a casual observer, these details look like damage. But to an expert, they're the very signs that turn copper into gold. These coins often travel unnoticed for decades. From registers to piggy banks, from junk drawers to estate sales, they quietly change hands until someone with knowledge finally spots the secret. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on every 1954 wheat penny they can, hoping to stumble upon that $1 million rarity. It means the coin hiding in your change jar could be the very one collectors are hunting for. One man discovered his $1 million penny after cleaning out his late father's tackle box. Another woman found hers in a dusty coffee can her grandparents kept in the attic. These aren't fairy tales. They're real stories of ordinary people stumbling upon extraordinary fortune. When inspecting a 1954 Lincoln wheat penny, pay close attention to the mint mark. Look for doubling, misalignment, or strange shapes. Study the numbers in the date, especially the 9 and the 4. Look for die cracks or unusual raised lines across Lincoln's portrait or the wheat stalks on the reverse. And most importantly, never dismiss a coin just because it looks old and worn. Even pennies with scratches and circulation marks can hold errors worth a fortune. Collectors say the thrill of finding one is like striking oil in your backyard. Dealers call them lottery tickets made of copper. And for the person who sells one, it can mean a new house, a debt-free life, or a secure retirement. In 1954, the Denver Mint struck a handful of coins with errors so rare, they're now worth more than $1.7 million. And one of those coins might still be out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with sharp eyes and a bit of luck to discover it. Check your change. Search your jars. Dig through those old boxes in the attic. Because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. But when it finally reached an auction block, it stunned the world and sold for a fortune most people can't even imagine. A single 1952 Lincoln wheat penny, the kind you might still find hiding in a dusty jar of change, has been valued at up to $1.8 million. And what makes this story truly mind-blowing is that nearly everyone who's ever held one of these pennies had no idea what they were looking at. The year was 1952. Harry Truman had just left the White House. Families were buying their first televisions. And at the San Francisco Mint, millions of Lincoln wheat pennies rolled off the presses, hot from the steel dies. To the untrained eye, they all looked the same, that familiar wheat reverse, that proud profile of Abraham Lincoln. But buried among the ordinary, a few coins came out different. Mistakes. Accidents. A tiny variation in strike, a subtle minting flaw, the kinds of things the mint tried desperately to keep hidden. But here's where it gets shocking. One of those little flaws, one of those overlooked details, turned out to be worth $1 million miracle. Collectors now whisper about it, dealers chase it, and ordinary people have stumbled across it in the most unexpected places: a pocket, an attic, even a child's piggy bank. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. In 2019, one of these 1952 wheat pennies showed up at a private auction, perfectly preserved, graded far higher than anyone expected. The bidding began modestly, but within minutes the price soared, climbing past thousands, then hundreds of thousands, until the hammer fell at a staggering figure. That tiny copper coin, barely an inch wide, had become a treasure worth $1.8 million. Think about that for a moment. The kind of money that could buy a dream home, pay off debts, or change an entire family's future, all wrapped up in a penny most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. And here's the kicker. The difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth over $1 million often comes down to details so small they're invisible to the casual eye. A misplaced mint mark, a double die error, an unusually sharp strike. Even the shade of the copper can tell a story that separates the common from the legendary. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Another collector nearly fainted when he realized the coin he bought for less than $20 decades earlier was actually one of the rarest 1952 pennies ever discovered. These aren't just coins. They're lightning in a bottle. Accidents frozen in metal, waiting decades to reveal their true power. But most people miss it. They see 1952 and think, oh, just another old wheat penny. They don't look close enough. They don't see the razor-sharp details in Lincoln's beard, or the doubling in the date, or the subtle differences in strike that send professional graders into a frenzy. That's why this story is so incredible. The coin that looks ordinary can actually be the one worth millions. Imagine this. You're at a garage sale. You buy a little tin of old coins for a couple of bucks. You take them home, dump them out on the table, and there it is. A 1952 wheat penny. At first, it looks like pocket change. But then you look closer. The color is unusually bright, the edges crisp, the mint mark perfectly placed but slightly tilted in a way you've never seen before. Your heart skips. Could it be? And then you realize, this exact penny could be the one. Collectors were shocked when they first learned how valuable these mistakes were. Dealers are rushing to secure any 1952 pennies in top condition. And grading companies are now swamped with submissions, people desperate to know if they've been sitting on a fortune all along. Some come back disappointed. But every now and then, one comes back with a grade so high it changes someone's life forever. But what makes this even more dramatic is how rare it truly is to find one untouched. Most pennies from the 1950s were tossed in jars, rubbed smooth by decades of circulation. Finding one crisp, bright, and unblemished? That's like lightning striking twice. And that's why when one does appear, the coin world gasps. First, the mint mark below the date. That tells you it was minted in San Francisco. Second, condition. If your penny looks nearly flawless, with all the details sharp and no major scratches, you're already in rare territory. And third, subtle errors. A doubling in the date or lettering, a slightly misplaced mint mark, or even an unusual shine in the copper. These are the secrets that turn an ordinary penny into one worth over $1 million. The truth is, the 1952 wheat penny teaches us something bigger. Sometimes, the most ordinary things in life hide extraordinary value. Sometimes the treasure is already in your hands, you just haven't looked closely enough, and here's the haunting thought I'll leave you with. Right now, in drawers, jars, and dusty boxes across America, there are still 1952 sweet pennies waiting to be discovered. Each one looks like just another coin, but one of them could pay for your entire future. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. But instead, it became one of the most shocking penny discoveries of the modern coin era. A simple copper coin, minted in Denver in 1956, a coin that most people would spend without a second thought, is now worth up to $1.1 million. How could a coin you could have found in a gumball machine become a life-changing treasure? That's the mystery that has stunned collectors for decades. The story begins in the mid-1950s, a time when Elvis ruled the radio, gas cost under 30 cents, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies. At first glance, the 1956 Dewey penny looks completely ordinary. It's just Lincoln's familiar profile on the front, wheat stalks on the back, and a tiny D beneath the year marking it as a Denver coin. Harmless. Unremarkable. Common. But buried among those billions was something different. A coin struck with subtle flaws, tiny details that the average eye would miss, but that change everything. You see, minting errors are the gold mine of coin collecting. A doubled die. An off-center strike. A repunched mint mark. Each error tells a story of a machine gone slightly wrong, of human oversight, of a perfect accident that transforms pocket change into priceless history. And the 1956 Dewey penny is no exception. Collectors were shocked when examples began surfacing with dramatic doubled dies, Lincoln's date, and lettering showing a ghostly second image. Others revealed repunched D mint marks, where the Denver D had been struck more than once, leaving a distinct shadow. To most people, these flaws look like nothing. But to those who know, they're worth their weight in gold. And then came the moment that shook the entire coin world. At auction, one of these 1956 Dewey pennies, in extraordinary condition, nearly flawless, with a sharp strike and dramatic doubling, sold for close to $1 million. A penny. A copper disc you could have pulled from your grandfather's change jar. One man's pocket change had become $1 million miracle. Why do some 1956 pennies fetch only a few cents, while others are worth more than most houses? The answer lies in the details. Tiny, nearly invisible details. Look at the "In God We Trust" motto. On certain era coins, the letters appear doubled, like a faint echo of the original strike. Look closely at the date, especially the 6. On the rarest examples, it shows clear signs of doubling. And then, the mint mark. A true treasure hunter knows to study that little D beneath the year. On the $1 million specimens, it shows dramatic repunching, almost like the Denver Mint worker accidentally struck it twice. Dealers rushed to get their hands on these coins once the news broke. Collectors scoured their change, their piggy banks, their old cigar boxes. Stories began pouring in of lucky finds. A widow discovering one in her late husband's coin collection, a teenager spotting one in a flea market box, an old man pulling one out of a coffee tin he'd kept since the 1950s. Each story felt like lightning striking twice. But here's the real kicker. Not every valuable 1956 penny looks obviously different. Some of the most valuable examples look almost identical to the ordinary ones, until you hold them under magnification. That's why so many slip through the cracks. That's why so many $1 million coins are still out there, hiding in plain sight. And let me reset your attention for a moment, because this part is crucial. A plain 1956 Dewey penny might only be worth a cent. But a rare double die, with crisp details, perfect luster, and a strong strike? That can catapult its value into the hundreds of thousands, even millions. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. You're sorting through your old coins one rainy afternoon. You almost toss a dusty penny aside, it's just a 1956 D. But something catches your eye. The date looks strange. You hold it closer. The 6 looks doubled. The D has a shadow. Your heart starts to race. Could this be the one? Could this be the coin that changes everything? That's how it happens. That's how ordinary people stumble upon extraordinary wealth. A second glance. A moment of curiosity. And suddenly, a penny worth $1.1 million is in your hand. So, what should you do if you think you have one? First, never clean the coin. Cleaning destroys value. Second, handle it carefully by the edges. Third, get it authenticated by a trusted grading service like PCGS or NGC. That little piece of paper certifying its condition and rarity could be the difference between pocket change and generational wealth. And here's the final secret. The best examples are in mint state condition, untouched by circulation, gleaming like they did the day they left the Denver Mint in 1956. If you or someone you know stashed away uncirculated rolls of pennies, you might be sitting on a hidden fortune without even realizing it. Think about it. 1 penny. One coin, no bigger than a thumbnail, struck nearly 70 years ago, now worth over $1 million. It almost ended up in the trash. It almost went unnoticed. But today, it stands as proof that treasures still hide in plain sight, waiting for someone with sharp eyes and a little luck. But instead, it shocked the coin world by being valued at over $1 million. Yes, we're talking about a simple 1957 wheat penny, a coin most people would overlook, toss into a jar, or even spend on a stick of gum. Yet hidden within this ordinary little copper piece lies the potential for a life-changing discovery. Think about it. A penny that cost 1 cent in 1957 is now worth up to $1.2 million. Collectors can't stop talking about it, dealers are scrambling to find one, and ordinary people are suddenly searching through their drawers, coin jars, and dusty old piggy banks. And it all comes down to one overlooked detail, a minting error so rare, most collectors have never even seen it in person. The story of this coin doesn't just begin in 1957. That year, America was booming. Elvis was on the radio, cars were bigger than ever, and the U.S. Mint was cranking out billions of pennies. In Denver alone, over 1 billion wheat pennies were struck with the little D mint mark. To most people, these coins were nothing special. They jingled in pockets, clinked in cash registers, and bought candy at the corner store. Nobody thought they would one day become legendary, but hidden among that sea of pennies, a mistake slipped through. And not just any mistake, the kind of mistake that transforms an ordinary coin into $1 million miracle. Collectors call it the 1957 wheat penny rarity, and it's the kind of discovery that makes your heart stop when you realize what you're holding. One man nearly missed it. He had a jar of old coins left behind by his father, nothing fancy, just loose change saved over decades. For years, it sat forgotten in a box in the attic. But one day, he decided to sort through it. He picked up a few shiny wheat pennies, ready to toss them into a bag for the bank. And then, he noticed something strange about one particular 1957 D. The lettering looked different, the strike wasn't normal, and the weight felt just slightly off. Curious, he showed it to a local dealer. The dealer's jaw dropped. What he held was no ordinary penny. It was $1 million rarity. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. At auction, collectors battled fiercely for it, each one knowing coins like this surface maybe once in a lifetime. The final hammer price? Over $1 million. And the man who nearly sent that penny back into circulation walked away with enough money to change his life forever. The value isn't in the date alone. It's in the errors, the flaws, and the little anomalies that slipped past the mint. Some 1957 D pennies show doubled lettering in the words, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty." Others have repunched mint marks, where the D was struck more than once. And the rarest of all are the off-metal errors, pennies accidentally struck on the wrong kind of planchet, like a silver dime, or even a foreign coin blank. These mistakes are so scarce, they can command prices that skyrocket into the hundreds of thousands, even $1 million. But this is where the story gets even wilder. Thousands of people have handled these coins without knowing it. They've been spent at grocery stores, slipped into tip jars, or given as change at gas stations. Some are still hiding in collections that people assume are worthless. That means the next $1 million penny could literally be in your hands right now, just waiting to be discovered. Now, here's what you need to know if you ever find a 1957 Dewey penny. First, look closely at the details. Is the mint mark perfectly normal, or does it look doubled, misplaced, or slightly tilted? Check the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust." For doubling, that subtle doubling can be the difference between 1 cent and $1 million. Hold it up to the light. If the coin's color, thickness, or shine looks unusual, it could mean it was struck on the wrong planchet. These are the kinds of details most people miss, but experts know they're pure treasure. Collectors were shocked when the first of these rare 1957 D pennies surfaced. Dealers rushed to verify it, and auction houses lined up to feature it, knowing the bidding war would be fierce. Today, the market value for one of these rare era pennies can reach up to $1.2 million. Imagine that, a penny that could buy you a house, a car, even set you up for retirement. Coins like this aren't just metal. They're history, mystery, and destiny rolled into one. They remind us that even the smallest, most ordinary thing in life can turn out to be extraordinary. So the next time you find a wheat penny, don't dismiss it. Look closely. Study it. Because the exact coin that could change your life forever might already be sitting in your pocket. And remember this, the 1957 Dewey penny worth up to $1.2 million isn't just a story about coins. It's a story about possibility. A reminder that treasure still hides in plain sight. And maybe, just maybe, your miracle penny is waiting for you to find it. The year was 1941. America was standing on the edge of World War II. Gasoline was rationed, radios buzzed with breaking news, and pocket change jingled with the simple copper Lincoln wheat penny. To almost everyone, it was just another coin. Ordinary. Forgettable. Tossed into jars, left in drawers, or spent without a second thought. But hidden among the billions of pennies minted that year was a tiny mistake, a rare, almost invisible anomaly, that turned one of these coins into $1 million miracle. Collectors whisper about it. Dealers chase it. And everyday people sometimes stumble upon it in the most unexpected places. Imagine reaching into an old coffee can of coins, or flipping through your grandfather's collection, and finding a penny that could pay off your mortgage, buy your dream car, or change your entire future. That's the story of the 1941 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark. Let's dive into the mystery. The 1941 penny was struck at multiple mints across the United States, but the Philadelphia Mint, known for producing coins without a mint mark, accidentally produced a very small number of pennies with errors that went completely unnoticed at the time. Slight variations in the die, faint doubling on the design, and microscopic imperfections turned what should have been a 1-cent coin into a treasure worth millions. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Decades later, a collector stumbled upon one of these rare 1941 no-mint mark wheat pennies. It looked ordinary at first glance, but under magnification, the details were shocking. The date showed a subtle doubling, the lettering was slightly shifted, and the luster was unlike any other penny from the same year. When it finally hit the auction block, jaws dropped. Bidders went to war, and when the hammer fell, the price climbed past $1.3 million. Think about that for a second. A penny. Something most of us drop between couch cushions or leave at the bottom of a jar. 1 cent, transformed into over $1 million. It's almost impossible to believe, but it happened, and here's where things get even more unbelievable. Experts believe more of these coins are still out there. Unrecognized. Sitting quietly in boxes, drawers, or tucked away in family collections. Most people miss the signs because they don't know what to look for. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The 1941 no-mint mark penny worth the big money usually has one or more striking features: a double die on the obverse, where Lincoln's profile or the date seems faintly duplicated, crisp wheat stalks on the reverse with stronger than usual lines, and most importantly, a flawless condition, sometimes even a shimmering red luster untouched by circulation. Coins like this, preserved by pure chance, are the ones that command astronomical prices. Even circulated versions, if they show rare errors or sharp detail, can be worth far more than face value. Collectors are constantly scouring coin shows, estate sales, and even flea markets, hoping to strike gold, or rather copper, with this very penny. One story tells of a man who found a 1941 wheat penny in his father's coin collection after decades in storage. Thinking it was just pocket change, he almost spent it. But a quick appraisal later revealed it was the rare variety, and it sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That one coin changed the course of his family's financial future forever. Now picture this. You're digging through an old coin jar on your dresser. Your eyes land on a brown, worn penny. You flip it over. Wheat stalks stare back at you. The date reads 1941. No mint mark. Could it be? Your heart races. What if this is the one? What if your forgotten penny is secretly worth over $1 million? Collectors were shocked when the first of these surfaced, but now, the hunt is on. Dealers are rushing to secure even average condition examples, hoping to uncover a hidden gem. Every day, people are rediscovering just how valuable this coin can be. And the truth is, anyone, yes, even you, might already own one without knowing it. First, check the date. It must be 1941. Next, make sure there's no mint mark under the date. That means it came from the Philadelphia Mint. Then, look closely at the details. Doubling on the numbers or letters, strong wheat stalk lines, and excellent condition are your best indicators. If your coin shines with original red luster, untouched by time, you may very well be holding a life-changing treasure. So don't overlook those old pennies lying around your house. What looks like a worthless copper coin could, in fact, be the ticket to your dreams. Because in the world of rare coins, the smallest details hide the biggest fortunes. It was small, brown, and ordinary-looking. A 1940 Lincoln wheat penny. To most people, it was just another piece of pocket change, the kind you toss into a coffee can and forget about. But hidden inside this humble coin was a secret that would turn it into one of the most valuable pieces of American history. It wasn't minted in San Francisco. It didn't come from Denver. This one had no mint mark at all. Just a simple 1940 stamped on its face, and the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln. But that small missing letter, combined with a rare minting error, transformed it into a collector's dream worth up to $1.4 million. Now, think about that for a second. A penny that most people would ignore, maybe even throw away, could be the ticket to a fortune. But the story of how this penny came to be is even stranger than its value. Back in 1940, America was on the edge of history. The Great Depression had left scars, World War II was looming, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to keep up with the growing demand for coinage. Millions of Lincoln wheat pennies rolled out of the presses. But in the chaos, mistakes were made. Some were struck on the wrong planchets, blank discs meant for foreign coins. Others showed doubling in the date or lettering. And then there were the coins that carried no mint mark, struck in Philadelphia, where a few rare errors slipped through without anyone noticing. For decades, these errors circulated quietly in pockets, purses, and jars. Nobody paid them any attention. A collector at an estate sale stumbled on a batch of old wheat pennies. Most were worth only a few cents. But one coin stood out. A 1940 penny with no mint mark, struck in such a strange and rare way that experts couldn't believe their eyes. The luster was flawless, the strike unusual, and hidden under magnification was an error so rare it sent shockwaves through the collecting community. That single coin went on to sell for an unbelievable price, climbing into the hundreds of thousands and eventually crossing the $1 million mark at auction. Collectors were stunned. Dealers rushed to get their hands on every 1940 no mint mark penny they could find. The buzz was electric. Because this wasn't just another old coin, this was the chance to hold history, to own the mistake that turned an ordinary penny into a $1 million miracle. But here's where it gets even more thrilling. Most people don't even know what to look for. They might hold this exact coin in their hand and never realize the fortune sitting between their fingers. That's why so many of these discoveries have been made by accident. A family cleaning out an attic, a cashier giving change, A jar of pennies spilled out on a kitchen table. One man reportedly found his 1940 wheat penny in a simple roll of coins from the bank. He almost spent it, but something told him to look closer. That 1 second of curiosity led to a life-changing discovery. His pocket change became worth over $1 million. Imagine how that must have felt. And here's the detail that makes all the difference. The 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln penny isn't valuable just because it's old. Age alone doesn't make a coin rare. It's the combination of condition, rarity, and error. The coin that reached $1.4 million was in near-perfect condition, showing no signs of wear. Every line of Lincoln's hair was crisp, every wheat stalk on the reverse was sharp. It looked almost untouched, despite being more than 80 years old. But the real secret was in the strike itself, a subtle error created by the minting press that slipped past inspectors. That one tiny mistake, invisible to the average person, is the reason this coin is now legendary. Now, here's where you need to pay attention. If you want to know whether your 1940 penny is the $1 million version, here's what to look for. First, check the mint mark. If there's an S or a D, it came from San Francisco or Denver. Still collectible, but not the $1 million star. The one you're hunting is the no mint mark from Philadelphia. Second, look closely at the date and lettering. Use a magnifying glass if you can. Some of these coins show doubling in the numbers or letters, a famous error called a doubled die. That can send the value skyrocketing. Third, condition is everything. A circulated coin with scratches and wear might only fetch a few dollars. But a coin in uncirculated, mint state condition, with sharp details and original red luster, could easily be worth tens of thousands, or more. And in the rarest cases, up to that jaw-dropping $1.4 million. And don't forget, errors aren't always obvious. Some of the most valuable pennies in history were overlooked for decades because nobody thought to look closely. That's why experts say, if you've got old wheat pennies lying around, don't rush to spend them. You might be holding a hidden treasure. Think about it. One tiny coin, overlooked for generations, hiding a secret worth more than a house, more than a car, more than most people's life savings. That's the magic of coin collecting. And that's why the 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is one of the most legendary discoveries in modern history. So before you dismiss that old jar of change in your kitchen drawer, take a second look. Because inside it could be the exact coin that changes your life forever. And remember this, somewhere out there, another 1940 no-mint mark wheat penny could still be waiting to be found. Maybe in your pocket right now. Maybe in a coin roll from the bank. Maybe in a jar that's been sitting untouched for decades. It's worth up to $1.5 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single penny, dated 1951 with a tiny D mint mark from Denver, hiding in plain sight, has changed lives. Imagine pulling a penny from your pocket and thinking it's nothing more than spare change. But what if that penny held the power to pay off your mortgage, buy your dream car, or even set you up for retirement? That's exactly the kind of miracle hiding behind the story of the 1951 Dewey penny. Collectors were shocked when this coin first hit the spotlight. At a glance, it looks just like millions of other wheat pennies made in Denver that year. But buried in those ordinary coins are rare, mysterious errors. Tiny imperfections struck at the U.S. Mint that transformed an everyday penny into $1 million miracle. One man almost lost his chance at fortune. He found a 1951 D penny while cleaning out an old coin jar in his garage. For weeks he ignored it. To him, it was just another old Lincoln cent. But one detail stood out: the lettering wasn't quite right, and the strike looked sharper, almost doubled. Out of curiosity, he took it to a dealer. What happened next stunned the entire coin world. The dealer's eyes widened as he examined it under the light. This wasn't just a regular penny. It was a rare double-die error, one of only a handful known to exist. That one coin, forgotten in a jar for decades, went on to sell at auction for a price that collectors could hardly believe, nearly $1.5 million. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Most people miss the key details that make this penny valuable. The 1951 Dewey penny can come with doubling on the date, the word liberty, or the famous phrase, In God we trust. Sometimes it's a subtle shift, other times the letters look thick and almost shadowed. And then there's the condition. Coins that survived with sharp edges and original luster. Those are the ones dealers are rushing to get their hands on. Many of these pennies are still out there. Every year, people stumble upon them in old collections, bank rolls, and even pocket change. One woman in Nebraska found hers tucked inside her grandfather's coin album, completely unaware that the coin was worth a fortune. The answer lies in the production process. That year, over 625 million pennies were struck in Denver alone. With such high numbers, mistakes were inevitable. Some planchets were misaligned, some dies wore out, and in rare cases, doubling occurred during the minting process. Those mistakes slipped past inspectors, escaped into circulation, and decades later, became treasures worth millions. Collectors describe it as a hunt for buried treasure. Dealers call it a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And for those lucky enough to find one, the emotional shock is unforgettable. One man said, "I couldn't breathe when I realized what I was holding. It was just a penny, until I learned it could change my entire life." And this isn't just hype. Auction houses have recorded jaw-dropping prices for these rare specimens. Stories circulate of private sales, collectors battling over a single coin, offers climbing into the millions. Each time, the humble wheat penny proves that even the smallest coin can carry unimaginable value. But here's the cliffhanger you've been waiting for. How do you know if you've got the $1 million version? Start by looking for the mint mark. The D under the date tells you it was struck in Denver. Next, check the date and lettering for doubling. Pay attention to unusual thickness or shadowy outlines on the numbers and letters. Finally, condition is everything. A heavily worn penny might still fetch a few thousand, but the sharp, uncirculated versions are the ones breaking records. So, the next time you see a 1951 Dewey penny, don't brush it off as just another coin. Don't toss it into a change jar. Examine it closely. Because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. Yes, you heard that right. A simple Lincoln wheat penny from 1952, struck in Denver, is now considered one of the most shocking discoveries in the coin world, and some rare examples have sold for up to $1.60 million. How could something so small, so ordinary, become a once-in-a-lifetime jackpot? Let's uncover the story. The year was 1952. America was rebuilding after World War II, cars were rolling off assembly lines, and pocket change was something you never thought twice about. But deep inside the Denver Mint, a handful of pennies were struck with subtle, hidden flaws, mistakes so rare that most people never even noticed them. These tiny errors are the reason a 1952 Dewey penny can transform from being worth just a cent to being worth a fortune. For decades, these pennies passed through soda machines, grocery store registers, and the hands of children collecting coins for bubblegum. Nobody looked closely. Nobody realized they were handling something that could change their life. At an auction, a coin dealer spotted a 1952 Dewey penny with razor-sharp details, an unusually strong strike, and a tiny minting irregularity. That single coin, which might have been tossed in a drawer for years, ended up selling for an eye-popping sum, climbing into the hundreds of thousands, and then, in more recent years, shattering expectations by being valued as high as $1.60 million. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on any 1952 D penny they could find. Suddenly, a coin once dismissed as just another wheat penny had become $1 million miracle. Here's the secret that most people miss. It all comes down to condition, rarity, and those tiny minting flaws. Some 1952 Dewey pennies were struck with doubled dies, where the lettering, numbers, or even Lincoln's profile shows a faint doubling effect. Others were struck off-center, or with subtle variations in the mint mark placement. Combine that with the pristine, uncirculated condition, known as mint state red, by grading services, and you have a recipe for a record-breaking coin. Imagine digging through an old coffee can of pennies from your grandfather's attic. You brush off the dust, glance at the dates, and then, there it is. 1952, a tiny D below the year. To most, it looks ordinary. But to a trained eye, it could be the ticket to a life-changing discovery. One man's pocket change became his retirement plan. One woman's forgotten coin roll turned into a six-figure payday. And with values climbing as high as $1.6 million, the excitement around this penny is only growing. So let's get specific. If you find a 1952 Dewey penny, examine it closely under good light. Look at the D mint mark. Is it perfectly aligned, or does it appear doubled, slightly tilted, or misplaced? Check the date. Does the 1952 show signs of doubling, especially on the 5 and the 2? Flip it over. Are the wheat stalks on the reverse crisp, sharp, and deeply defined? The sharper the detail, the higher the value. And if your coin still shines bright red, like the day it was minted, you may just be holding a treasure. Now here's a twist most people don't expect. Even without visible errors, a 1952 D penny in pristine, untouched condition can still be worth tens of thousands, and the finest known examples have broken into million-dollar territory. That means even the coin sitting in your jar right now could be the one. If you toss it aside, or spend it on a cup of coffee without realizing? That's exactly what happened to countless people over the last 70 years. They spend away their chance at a fortune without even knowing, because this is more than just a penny. It's a piece of history. It's a symbol of how the smallest details can hold the greatest value. And it's a reminder that sometimes, life-changing opportunities are hiding right in plain sight. If you ever see a 1952 penny with that little D mint mark, don't ignore it. Hold it, study it, and if it matches the signs we've talked about, you could be looking at a payday of hundreds of thousands, maybe even over $1 million. But instead, it became one of the most valuable pennies in American history. A single 1958 Lincoln penny, the kind most people would toss into a jar without a second thought, shocked the entire coin world when it sold for nearly $1.7 million. Now think about that for a moment. A single penny, worth less than a piece of bubble gum, turning into a life-changing fortune. How is that even possible? Well, the story of this coin is not just about money, it's about mystery, accident, and pure luck. The year was 1958. America was on the edge of a new era. Eisenhower was president, Elvis was ruling the airwaves, and the Lincoln penny was everywhere. But hidden deep inside the U.S. Mint's machinery, something went wrong. Or, as collectors now believe, something went incredibly right. You see, the penny that year was supposed to follow the classic Lincoln wheat reverse design, the two wheat stalks that had been on the back of every penny since 1909. But then, something rare happened. A small handful of coins slipped through without the wheat reverse. Instead, they carried a design that wasn't supposed to exist. At first, nobody noticed. To the average person, a penny was a penny. But one collector decades later stumbled on a coin so strange, so out of place, that it shook the entire numismatic community. Most people who see this penny don't even realize what they're holding. They just spend it, drop it in a drawer, or let it sit in an old coffee can. But for the lucky few who know what to look for, this tiny coin can be worth over $1 million. Word began to spread. Dealers whispered about a mysterious 1958 penny unlike any other. Auction houses started getting calls. Collectors were desperate to know if the stories were true. And then, in a high-stakes auction, the truth was revealed. The coin sold. Not for a few thousand. Not even for a few $100,000. But for over $1.7 million. Imagine the gasps in that room. Imagine the looks on the faces of collectors who had dedicated their lives to searching through pocket change, suddenly realizing that one of the rarest coins of the 20th century had just been confirmed. And here's where it gets even crazier. Experts believe only a tiny handful of these coins exist. We're not talking about hundreds. Not even dozens. Maybe just a few. That's why every time one shows up, it makes headlines. That's why collectors are rushing to get their hands on it. The secret lies in the reverse. Flip the coin over. On a normal 1958 penny, you'll see the wheat stalks, one on each side, framing the words 1 cent. But on this ultra-rare piece, the wheat is gone. Instead, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial design, years before it was officially introduced in 1959. A mistake, or maybe a quiet test run by the Mint. Either way, it created one of the most valuable errors in American coinage. And here's the detail that most people miss. The coin must have no mint mark, meaning it was struck in Philadelphia. If you see a D for Denver or an S for San Francisco, it's not the $1 million version. That one little missing letter can mean the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth $1.7 million. Now imagine this. Somewhere in a forgotten jar in someone's basement, or tucked inside a cigar box in a relative's attic, one of these pennies could still be waiting. A coin that most people would overlook, sitting there, ready to change someone's life. And the story doesn't end there. Every time a rare penny like this comes to light, it reignites the hunt. Collectors race to examine their rolls of change. Dealers watch every auction with bated breath. Because nobody knows how many are still out there. This is why coin collecting is more than a hobby. It's a treasure hunt. It's the thrill of knowing that history might be sitting in your hands. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle. And the same thing could happen to you. So tonight, when you empty your pockets, take a closer look. Don't just toss those pennies aside. Check the date. Check the reverse. Look for that missing mint mark. Because the coin that could change your life might already be in your possession. Remember, the rare 1958 no wheat, no mint mark Lincoln penny isn't just a coin, it's a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. A tiny piece of copper that carries the weight of history, mystery, and fortune. But when the truth came out, the 1948 wheat penny with no mint mark was valued at up to $1.8 million. Yes, a single copper penny, the kind you've probably handled hundreds of times in your life, transformed from everyday change into a life-changing fortune. Now, let's go back. The year was 1948. America was still recovering from World War II. Factories that had once built tanks and planes were now producing cars, radios, and yes, pennies. The Lincoln wheat penny was still in circulation, a familiar piece of copper most people barely glanced at before tossing it into their pocket. But deep inside the Philadelphia Mint, a tiny imperfection, a small twist of fate, gave birth to something extraordinary. Most pennies from 1948 look ordinary. Lincoln's profile, wheat stalks on the back, nothing unusual at all. But here's the mystery: a select few with no mint mark, struck with slight irregularities, became so rare that collectors would later fight tooth and nail to own them. Some of these coins were struck on leftover bronze planchets, others with striking errors so subtle that even seasoned coin dealers missed them at first glance. And here's the part that stunned the coin world. A man cleaning out his attic stumbled across an old cigar box left by his father. Inside, a pile of wheat pennies, nothing special, or so he thought. But buried in the mix was a 1948 penny with no mint mark. He nearly gave it away at a garage sale. Instead, curiosity led him to a local coin shop. What happened next shocked him to his core. The dealer's jaw literally dropped. "Do you know what you're holding?" he asked. That single penny later sold at auction for close to $1 million. And today, in pristine condition, the 1948 no mint mark wheat penny has been valued at as high as $1.8 million. This is where most people miss the golden detail. The Philadelphia Mint, unlike Denver or San Francisco, traditionally didn't mark its coins. So, most 1948 pennies don't carry a mint mark. But the value doesn't come from the missing letter. It comes from a combination of ultra-high-grade preservation, rare striking errors, and the fact that only a handful survived without being worn down in circulation. Out of the millions made, only a tiny fraction exist in perfect, uncirculated condition today. That's what separates a penny worth 1 cent from a penny worth $1 million. Collectors were shocked when the first big auction result hit the headlines. Suddenly, the everyday wheat penny from 1948 was no longer something ordinary. Dealers began combing through their inventories. Treasure hunters dug through jars and boxes in search of one gleaming copper coin that could change everything. And those lucky enough to own one found themselves holding a piece of history, and a ticket to unimaginable wealth. How do you know if the penny in your hand is one of these $1 million treasures? This is where most people slip up. First, condition is everything. A coin with scratches, dents, or heavy wear might only fetch a few bucks. But one preserved in mint state, with sharp details on Lincoln's hair, cheek, and the wheat stalks, can fetch life-changing sums. Second, look for any unusual toning, doubled features, or striking errors that set it apart from ordinary circulation coins. And finally, the professional grading matters. Coins graded MS-67 or higher are the ones that have stunned the market and crossed into million-dollar territory. One collector once said, "It's like lightning in a bottle. You can hold a lifetime of ordinary pennies, but all it takes is one miracle coin to change your world forever." That's the magic of the 1948 no-mint mark wheat penny. So, the next time you're sifting through your change, don't dismiss that old copper cent. Look closely. Hold it up to the light. Examine every curve, every line. Because hidden in your pocket, in a jar, or maybe even sitting in your grandfather's old desk, could be a penny that isn't worth 1 cent, but over $1 million. And if you want to uncover more secrets like this, more stories of pennies, nickels, and dimes worth a fortune, make sure you subscribe and join us. Because the next rare coin discovery could be sitting in your hands right now, waiting to change your life. But when the truth came out, it shocked the entire coin collecting world. A single 1951 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark sold for over $1 million. And right now, one of these life-changing treasures could be sitting unnoticed in your pocket, your jar of old coins, or buried in a family drawer. The story of this penny begins in the heart of post-war America. 1951 was a year of recovery and prosperity. The U.S. Mint was producing millions of pennies to keep up with the booming economy. To the average person, these little copper coins were nothing more than pocket change. But in that sea of ordinary coins, something extraordinary happened. A small error. A subtle difference. A twist of fate that would take a penny worth 1 cent and turn it into a fortune worth $1.1 million. Now here's where it gets mysterious. Most 1951 pennies came from either Denver or San Francisco, and you can spot their tiny mint marks under the date. But in Philadelphia, pennies were struck without any mint mark at all. At first glance, they looked perfectly normal. But every so often, one of those no mint mark wheat pennies came out with a slight imperfection. A double die here. A striking mistake there. And those tiny mistakes are now worth a fortune. But what happened next stunned collectors everywhere. One of these 1951 no mint mark wheat pennies, nearly forgotten in a collection, went up for auction. Bidding began modestly. But within minutes, the price skyrocketed. 10,000. 50,000. Hundreds of thousands. And then, to everyone's disbelief, the final gavel came down. Over $1 million. For a coin most people would have spent without a second thought, collectors were left speechless. Dealers rushed to check their inventories. And ordinary people across the country started digging through jars of wheat pennies, praying they too might hold a miracle. Because this wasn't just another old coin. This was a once-in-a-lifetime mistake that turned everyday change into a $1 million prize. The answer is hidden in the details. On some 1951 pennies, the letters in Liberty show doubling, as if struck twice. On others, the date itself carries a faint but visible error. And on some of the rarest, the wheat stalks on the back appear sharper and bolder, the product of a misaligned die. To an untrained eye, these look like imperfections. To a collector, their gold-dot condition is everything. A worn penny from 1951 might fetch a few dollars. But a crisp, uncirculated coin with a rare error? That's where the $1 million miracles happen. Imagine the shock of one man who pulled an ordinary-looking penny from his late father's cigar box. At first, he thought it was just sentimental. But after a quick appraisal, he realized it was one of the rarest no mint mark errors ever struck. That single coin changed his family's fortune overnight. Think about that for a second. 1 cent becoming over $1 million. That's not just rare, that's unbelievable. Yet it's real. And right now, as you're watching this, one of those coins could be out there, hiding in plain sight. First, flip the penny over. Make sure it's dated 1951. Then, look closely under the date. If there's no mint mark, no little d, no little s, you could be holding the Philadelphia strike. That's your first sign. Next, check the word, Liberty, and the date. Do you see any doubling? Even a faint shadow? That could be the jackpot. Finally, examine the wheat stalks on the back. Stronger lines, deeper grooves, and unusual clarity are clues you're staring at something extraordinary. And here's the secret most people never hear. Even if your coin looks ordinary, never dismiss it until it's been checked by a professional grader. Because the tiniest detail can mean the difference between a penny worth a few cents and one worth more than $1 million. The 1951 no mint mark Lincoln wheat penny isn't just a piece of history. It's a symbol of possibility. It proves that life-changing fortune can hide in the most ordinary places: a pocket, a jar, a drawer you haven't opened in years. So tonight, when you go home, don't just dump your change on the counter. Look at it. Examine it. Because the very coin that others overlook could be your ticket to $1 million miracle. And remember, this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. That coin looked like an ordinary penny, the kind you've probably passed over 100 times in your life without even a second thought. The year was 1944. The world was still engulfed in World War II. The United States Mint was under intense pressure, cranking out billions of pennies to fuel the economy. But in the chaos of war production, something happened. Something so rare, so strange, that it created one of the most valuable coins in American history, the 1944 wheat penny with no mint mark. Now, at first glance, it looks like any other copper penny. Lincoln's profile on the front, wheat stalks on the back. You might even mistake it for the kind of coin you toss in a tip jar or find wedged under your car seat. But collectors know the truth. They know this little coin carries a secret that can turn a simple piece of pocket change into a fortune worth up to $1.2 million. But how could a coin so common, produced in the hundreds of millions, become so incredibly rare and valuable? The answer lies in a mistake. You see, in 1943, pennies weren't copper at all. They were made of steel, coated in zinc. Copper was needed for the war effort, for ammunition and weapons. But in 1944, the mint switched back to copper. Or at least, that was the plan. And here's where the mystery begins. Somewhere in the mint's machinery, a few leftover steel planchets from 1943 slipped into production. They were struck with the 1944 design, creating a penny that should never have existed. A 1944 penny with no mint mark, struck in steel instead of copper. Most people who came across one of these coins had no idea what they were holding. They were spent in grocery stores, dropped in piggy banks, lost in the folds of old wallets. And yet, decades later, the few that survived started resurfacing. And when they did, they stunned the coin collecting world. At auctions, dealers gasped as bids skyrocketed. One of these coins sold for nearly $1.2 million, an unimaginable figure for something that was supposed to be worth just 1 cent. And that sale lit a fire under collectors everywhere. Suddenly, every 1944 penny became suspect. Every wheat cent from that year had the chance to be a miracle find. Not every 1944 penny is valuable. In fact, most are only worth a few cents, maybe a few dollars if they're in great condition. The $1 million version hides in plain sight, but it has a key difference, and if you don't know what to look for, you'll pass it right by. The detail is shocking. A genuine 1944 steel wheat penny is magnetic, because it's made from leftover wartime steel. Hold a magnet to it. If it sticks, you might just be staring at a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Collectors have literally carried magnets into coin shops, scanning through buckets of wheat pennies, hoping for that tiny tug that changes everything. But here's where the story gets even crazier. Imagine this: one man bought a jar of old coins at a flea market for less than $10. Inside, sitting unnoticed for years, was a 1944 steel penny. When he had it authenticated, experts confirmed it was real, and overnight, his pocket change became $1 million miracle. Stories like that fuel the obsession. They keep collectors searching, digging through old rolls of pennies, checking every date, every detail, Every sound a coin makes when it hits the counter. They're desperate. They know these coins are so rare that finding even one could define their entire career. Some dealers have spent years chasing rumors, following leads, traveling across states, just for the chance to see one in person. That's how legendary this coin has become. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. In one high-profile auction, a 1944 no-mint mark steel penny smashed records, drawing headlines around the globe. Newspapers called it the penny that shouldn't exist. Collectors called it the holy grail of American coinage. And ordinary people like you and me, began wondering if maybe, just maybe, one of these pennies was hiding in their change jar at home. 1944. Second, make sure there's no mint mark under the date. That means it was struck in Philadelphia. And third, the most important step of all, test it with a magnet. If it sticks, you're holding steel, not copper. And if it's steel, you might be holding a coin worth $1 million. But there's a warning too. Counterfeits flood the market. Some people take 1943 steel pennies and alter the date to make them look like 1944s. Others plate regular copper cents to make them shine like steel. That's why authentication is critical. A real 1944 steel penny with no mint mark has been verified by experts, and once it's certified, it becomes one of the most valuable coins in existence. So picture this: somewhere in America right now, a 1944 wheat penny is sitting unnoticed in a drawer, waiting for the right person to discover it. It could be in an old coffee can of coins in someone's garage. It could be in a jar of pennies your grandparents forgot about. It could even be in your pocket change, passed along unknowingly from one hand to the next. And when that coin is finally found, when it's recognized for what it truly is, it will transform an ordinary moment into something extraordinary. That's the magic of coin collecting, the thrill of the hunt, the chance to uncover history, and the possibility that one simple penny could change your life forever. So tonight, when you empty your pockets, don't just toss those pennies aside. Look closely. Check the dates. Hold a magnet to them. Because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. But instead, it stunned collectors when it was revealed to be worth over $1 million. The year was 1953. America was booming after the war, televisions were finding their way into living rooms, and a loaf of bread cost just 17 cents. Pennies were pocket change, forgotten, tossed in jars, given to kids to spend on candy. But among those ordinary coins struck in Denver, one extraordinary Lincoln wheat penny slipped through the presses with a secret that no one noticed, until decades later. At first glance, the 1953 wheat penny looks just like the billions of others struck that year. Lincoln's familiar profile, the two wheat stalks on the reverse, the small D mint mark under the date. But on a few rare coins, something went wrong inside the mint. An imperfection, an alignment error, a double striking, mistakes so small that most people passed them off without ever realizing they were holding history in their hands. And that's where the story gets incredible. One of these 1953 wheat pennies, believed to be lost to time, resurfaced in a private collection. It wasn't just a nice coin, it was a once-in-a-lifetime mistake, so rare that when it hit the auction block, seasoned dealers gasped. The hammer price? Over $1 million. Phone lines lit up. Collectors everywhere were rushing to check their old jars, their father's coin albums, their grandmother's keepsake boxes. Could they, too, be sitting on a hidden treasure worth $1 million? Stories began to pour in. Everyday people finding overlooked coins in dusty drawers, coins they had spent decades ignoring. And while not every 1953 was a jackpot, the few that were changed lives forever. The truth is, these coins aren't just worth money. They carry stories. Imagine a penny that once bought a gumball now buying a house. A penny that once rode in the pocket of a factory worker now locked behind glass in a vault. A tiny piece of copper, dismissed as nothing, suddenly becoming a miracle of fortune. And here's the part most people miss: the details that separate a common penny worth 1 cent from the one that's worth over $1 million. Look closely at the date. Examine the mint mark. Some of these rare varieties show doubling, a slight shadow effect on the numbers, or a misplaced D. Others have sharp, unexpected die cracks that look like tiny lightning bolts across the coin. Condition matters too. A coin with a perfect shine, untouched by decades of wear, skyrockets in value. One collector even recalled how he almost spent his 1953 Dewey penny on a cup of coffee. At the last second, he tossed it back into a jar. Years later, it paid for his retirement. A simple hesitation turned into $1 million miracle. But here's the cliffhanger. Most people will never know they had the treasure until it's too late. These rare coins still slip through garage sales, flea markets, and even loose change at the grocery store. And the thought that the coin in your pocket right now could be one of them is enough to keep collectors awake at night. Dealers are on high alert. Auctions are watching for the next big discovery. Every time a 1953 Dewey penny appears in high grade or with an unusual minting flaw, bidding wars erupt. The value climbs higher, and the legend grows stronger. So how can you tell if you've got the $1 million version? First, check for the 1953 date with a small d under it. Next, inspect it under a magnifying glass. Look for doubling on the numbers, an off-center strike, or a faint but unusual crack. And finally, condition is king. Coins that look nearly untouched, with their original luster, are the ones that can break records. Think about that. A coin minted over 70 years ago, a coin people once ignored, a coin you might already own, could be the key to life-changing money. Collectors were shocked. Dealers are still chasing it. And you, yes you, could be the one to find the next miracle penny. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. Yes, a penny. A simple copper penny most people wouldn't glance at twice. But what you're about to hear is a story that has stunned collectors, shocked dealers, and turned ordinary people into millionaires overnight. The year was 1956. Dwight Eisenhower was president, Elvis was topping the charts, and the Lincoln wheat penny was still the everyday coin of the American people. Billions were struck. You could find them in every cash register, every kid's allowance jar, every corner of American life. And yet, somewhere inside the machinery of the U.S. Mint, something unexpected happened. A minting anomaly so rare, so overlooked, that only a handful of people would ever realize what they were holding. Most of these 1956 pennies were struck at the Denver Mint. They carry a small D below the date. But the ones without any mint mark? Those came from Philadelphia. And while that might sound ordinary, here's the twist: not all Philadelphia coins were created equal. A few left the presses with microscopic flaws, doubled features, or striking errors that transformed a 1-cent piece into $1 million miracle. But here's the kicker: for decades, people had no idea. These coins circulated in pocket change, sliding across counters, lost in dusty jars, buried in old coffee cans. Until one day, a collector pulled a 1956 wheat penny from circulation, examined it closely, and realized the tiniest details were off. What looked like just another penny was, in fact, a golden ticket to fortune, and what happened next stunned the entire coin world. At auction, one of these no-mint marked 1956 Lincoln wheat pennies, in pristine condition, fetched an eye-watering sum, up to $1.4 million. That's not a typo. $1 million. For a coin you or I could have spent on a gumball. Now here's where it gets even more dramatic. Experts believe that there are still undiscovered 1956 wheat pennies hiding in plain sight. In old rolls of coins. In cigar boxes stored in your grandparents' attic. In the pocket change you've tossed into a drawer and forgotten about. That's why collectors are obsessed with this date, because the odds of finding one are higher than most people think. Let's slow down for a second. It isn't just about the date, or the missing mint mark. The secret lies in the details: sharp, crisp wheat stalks on the reverse, a flawless shine, and in some cases, subtle minting errors like doubling on Lincoln's profile or unusual planchet mistakes. These rare anomalies are the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth $1 million. Condition is everything. A worn, scratched penny might only bring a few dollars. But one preserved in mint state, tucked away untouched for decades, can shatter records. Collectors and dealers are racing to find these gems before they disappear forever into private collections. But the story doesn't end there. Imagine this. One man in the Midwest was sorting through an inherited coin jar, a mix of old wheat pennies and modern change. Most were worth face value. But there, shining faintly under the lamp, was a 1956 no-mint mark penny in extraordinary condition. He sent it for grading, and the results were staggering. That single penny turned into a life-changing payday, a story now whispered about in collector circles as one of the great penny finds of the modern era. And here's the part that gives every coin collector goosebumps. If it happened to him, it can happen to you. Right now. The odds are slim, but they are very real. One penny could rewrite your financial future. One penny could carry your family's story for generations. First, check the date, 1956. No mint mark beneath it. Next, study the condition. Does it have a strong strike? Clear wheat lines on the back? Minimal wear? And if you're lucky, you might notice unusual doubling in the lettering or Lincoln's features. That's the kind of detail most people overlook, and the exact kind of detail that makes collectors willing to pay millions. So tonight, when you open that old jar of coins or count your loose change, pay attention. That little copper penny you've ignored 100 times could be the one. It could be the coin that turns your pocket change into $1 million fortune. Collectors were shocked. Dealers are still chasing them. And ordinary people just like you are holding out hope that the next great discovery will be theirs. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This penny almost slipped through history without anyone noticing. Just a simple coin, a 1958 wheat penny from the Denver Mint. The kind you'd expect to find rolling under a couch cushion or clinking in an old mason jar of change. But this coin has shocked collectors, shattered expectations, and stunned the auction world with a value that climbs as high as $1.5 million. Imagine this. For decades, countless 1958 wheat pennies were minted, handed out as change for newspapers, sodas, and gasoline that cost barely 30 cents a gallon. To most people, it was just another penny. Nothing special. But hidden in that sea of copper lies a mistake, a rare and fateful error that turned a 1-cent coin into a life-changing fortune. The story begins in Denver, 1958. The U.S. Mint was wrapping up the wheat penny series, about to retire one of America's most beloved coin designs. The following year, the Lincoln Memorial Reverse would take its place. But as the final wheat pennies rolled out, the minting machinery produced something extraordinary. Some dies, the steel stamps that pressed the image into the coin, carried a doubling mistake. And not just any doubling. A doubling so dramatic, so bold, that even a casual glance could spot at once you knew what to look for. Collectors today call it the 1958 double-die wheat penny. On the obverse side, Abraham Lincoln stares ahead, but the inscriptions, Liberty, and the words, In God We Trust, appear doubled, as if the coin were printed with a ghostly shadow. That doubling was not intentional. It was a minting error, one so rare that fewer than 5 examples are confirmed to exist. Think about that for a moment. Out of the tens of millions of 1958 pennies minted, only a handful slipped through the presses like this. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One of these 1958 double-die pennies surfaced at auction, and the hammer price left collectors speechless. Bidding wars erupted. Dealers couldn't believe what they were seeing, and when the dust settled, that small copper coin had fetched over $1 million. A penny that once bought a gumball now worth more than a luxury mansion. And here's the part that keeps collectors awake at night. Nobody knows how many more might still be out there. Hidden in coffee cans, shoeboxes, or forgotten collections passed down from grandparents. Somewhere, someone could be holding a coin worth $1.5 million and not even realize it. Let's pause and think about how a discovery like this changes everything. One man's pocket change became a miracle, a life-altering treasure hiding in plain sight. It's like winning the lottery. But instead of buying a ticket, you just need to look closely at the coins you already have. But here's the tiny detail that separates an ordinary 1958 wheat penny from the $1 million marvel: the doubling. Look carefully at In God We Trust. across the top of the coin. The letters will show a dramatic, clear doubling, not just a slight shadow. On Liberty, to Lincoln's left, the doubling is bold and unmistakable. And on the date itself, 1958, the doubling effect makes the numbers leap out at you. This is not a trick of the eye. It's the very error that turned copper into gold. Collectors were shocked when the first one hit the market. Dealers rushed to verify its authenticity. Even the grading services, experts who see millions of coins every year, confirmed its rarity and placed it among the most valuable Lincoln cents ever struck. And every time another example has appeared, the price has soared higher. You're cleaning out an old drawer, sorting through coins your parents or grandparents left behind, and there it is, a 1958 penny. At first, you think nothing of it. Just another wheat cent. But then you hold it up to the light, and the letters look doubled. You take a closer look, your heart races, and suddenly you realize you might be holding one of the rarest and most valuable pennies in American history. But here's the twist: most people don't even know this coin exists. They pass it by, toss it back into circulation, or leave it buried in jars for decades. That's why discoveries like this continue to shock the hobby. Every new example that surfaces proves one thing: treasures like this are still waiting to be found. The truth is, the 1958 double-die penny has become a legend. It's one of the final wheat pennies ever made, carrying with it not only a design that collectors love but also a mistake so rare it changed the coin's destiny forever. Some call it the holy grail of Lincoln cents. Others see it as a reminder that miracles can hide in the smallest places. If you want to identify this coin, don't just glance at the date. Don't assume every 1958 wheat penny is the same. Take out a magnifying glass. Look at Liberty. Look at In God We Trust. If the doubling is sharp, bold, and unmistakable, you could be staring at a fortune. Make sure you don't confuse it with machine doubling, a common effect where the letters look flat and smeared. The real double die has crisp, strong outlines. That's the million-dollar detail. History rewards those who pay attention. And this penny, this tiny piece of copper from 1958, has turned ordinary people into millionaires simply because they looked closely. Have you gone through those old jars of pennies tucked away in closets and attics? Because this exact coin could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. The year was 1955. America was booming, Elvis Presley was about to hit the radio, and nobody cared much about pennies. They were just tiny copper coins, tossed into change jars or left rattling at the bottom of pockets. But inside the U.S. Mint that year, something strange happened. Something that would shock collectors for decades to come. Under the harsh lights of the minting presses, a batch of Lincoln wheat pennies was struck. But not all of them came out the way they should have. A mechanical slip, a tiny misalignment of the dies, created one of the most dramatic minting errors in American coinage. The result? A penny where Abraham Lincoln's date, 1955, looked doubled. The inscriptions appeared ghostly, shadowed, and bold, almost like the coin itself was whispering a secret. At first, nobody noticed. These flawed coins slipped into circulation quietly, traveling from Boston to New York, from grocery stores to gas stations. Most people spent them without a second glance. But sharp-eyed collectors began to spot something odd. The doubling was so clear, so dramatic, that even a child could see it. This wasn't just an error, it was a mistake so rare, so powerful, it would turn the world of coin collecting upside down. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Stories began to spread of people finding these pennies in their pocket change, pennies that dealers were paying hundreds, then thousands, and now, more than $1 million for. Imagine buying a stick of gum in 1955, getting a penny back in change, and unknowingly holding a future fortune between your fingers. Collectors were shocked. The 1955 double-die penny became a legend almost overnight. Newspapers wrote about it. Hobby magazines couldn't get enough of it. Dealers rushed to track down every single one, desperate to get their hands on this $1 million miracle. And every time one appeared at auction, the numbers climbed higher. From a few $100s, to thousands, to hundreds of thousands, and eventually, for the finest examples, up to $1.6 million. Think about that. A coin worth 1 cent, suddenly transformed into a life-changing treasure. One man's pocket change became his retirement plan. Another collector traded up to a house, all because of this tiny copper mistake. And yet, countless others never knew. Many of these rare pennies were spent, lost, or thrown away, slipping through history unnoticed. Most people don't even know what to look for. That's why these treasures can still hide in plain sight. So listen carefully, because this is the part that matters most. When you hold a 1955 wheat penny in your hand, look closely at the date. If the numbers 1955 appear doubled, thick, and shadow-like, you may have found the legendary doubled die. The doubling is also clear on the word, liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust." Regular wear and tear might make it faint, but even then, the doubling is unmistakable compared to an ordinary coin. But here's the trap: thousands of counterfeits exist. Some are just ordinary pennies with altered dates. Others are poor imitations made to fool hopeful collectors. Don't be tricked. A true 1955 doubled die has dramatic, bold doubling that leaps off the surface. No magnifying glass is required, it's that obvious. Dealers know it. Collectors know it. And now you know it too. This exact coin could be sitting in a coin jar, tucked in an old desk drawer, or resting in a box of change your grandparents left behind. This isn't just about copper and numbers. This is about the thrill of discovery, about turning the ordinary into the extraordinary, about finding $1 million treasure where the world sees nothing at all. Every coin you touch could carry a story, a mystery, a fortune. And the 1955 doubled die penny is proof of that. So next time you see an old wheat penny, don't ignore it. Don't toss it aside. Look closer. Because hidden in your change could be the same coin that shocked the world, made history, and turned 1 cent into $1.6 million. But when the truth came out, it was valued at over $1.7 million. And here's the part that will shock you most. You might have one sitting in your pocket change right now. The year was 1946. World War II had just ended, soldiers were coming home, and America was beginning to rebuild. Families were celebrating peace, factories were shifting away from war production, and in the middle of it all, the U.S. Mint was producing billions of Lincoln wheat pennies. Most were ordinary copper coins, but hidden among them was a mistake. A mistake so rare, so unexpected, that decades later it would stun the entire coin-collecting world. You see, during the war years, pennies had been made from steel to save copper for the military. In 1943, those steel cents became infamous. But by 1946, the mint was supposed to be back on track with normal copper pennies. Still, something went wrong. Somewhere between the transition, a few pennies were struck on leftover experimental planchets, or with slight minting errors, creating coins that shouldn't exist. Most slipped into circulation unnoticed, blending in with the billions of ordinary pennies. But here's the twist that keeps collectors awake at night. One of these coins, a no-mint marked 1946 Lincoln wheat penny, resurfaced in pristine condition, and when it hit the auction block, it didn't just fetch thousands. It shattered expectations with a value pushing $1.7 million. Collectors were stunned. Dealers couldn't believe their eyes. A coin that people had dismissed as pocket change had suddenly become $1 million miracle. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world even more. Once word spread, everyone started digging through their coin jars, their old boxes, even the loose change in their glove compartments. Stories began surfacing of ordinary Americans discovering life-changing treasures. One man found his 1946 wheat penny buried in an old cigar box in his attic. Another collector swore he spotted his in a jar his grandfather had saved since the 1950s. Each time, the discovery sent shockwaves through the community. And here's the tiny detail most people miss, and it makes all the difference. The 1946 no-mint mark wheat penny looks almost identical to the billions of regular cents minted that year. Same portrait of Abraham Lincoln. Same wheat stalks on the reverse. Same copper color. But under close inspection, the rare error coins reveal subtle differences. Some were struck on leftover steel-coated planchets, others show double dyes in the lettering, and a few even display off-center strikes that make them instantly recognizable to experts. Someone holding that penny in their palm, not realizing they're staring at $1 million. Think about how many of these coins were casually spent on bubble gum, a bus ride, or a newspaper, lost forever in circulation. That's what makes the surviving examples so valuable. They are ghosts of history, reminders of a fleeting moment when the mint made mistakes that turned ordinary metal into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. And here's the kicker: most people don't know what to look for. That's why so many of these rare coins go unnoticed. Dealers have said countless times, "You'd be shocked at how many million-dollar coins slip through people's hands every single day." Start by checking the date, 1946. If there's no mint mark under the date, you already have a piece from the Philadelphia Mint. Now, hold the coin under a good light. Look closely at the lettering. "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date. Doubling in these areas could mean a double die, and that could mean your coin is worth far more than face value. Next, feel the weight. The normal 1946 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams in copper. If it weighs less, or seems magnetic, you may be holding one of the ultra-rare leftover steel planchet errors. And finally, condition is everything. A coin worn down from circulation might still be valuable, but the ones in pristine, uncirculated condition are the ones that can reach into the millions. But here's the part that gives me chills. Every time one of these rare pennies surfaces, it rewrites someone's life. Imagine selling a coin you found in your dresser drawer and suddenly having enough to pay off your mortgage, send your kids to college, or retire early. That's not just a coin, that's freedom. That's history whispering into your hands. You don't need to be a millionaire to search for one. It could be sitting in a coin roll from the bank. It could be in an old coffee can of change. It could be in the pennies you've ignored for years, collecting dust in AJAR.so. The next time you see a 1946 penny with no mint mark, don't shrug it off. Don't toss it in the change jar. Stop. Look closer. Because that 1 cent could be worth more than most cars, more than most homes. It could be worth $1.7 million. And here's the truth you need to remember. These treasures don't just belong to museums, they're out there in the wild, waiting to be found by someone just like you. So grab a magnifying glass, check your pennies, and never underestimate the value of what looks ordinary. Because sometimes, the most ordinary coin hides the most extraordinary secret. But when it finally came to light, it stunned collectors everywhere, because this simple 1942 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark was valued at up to $1.8 million. Think about that for a second. A penny. A coin so ordinary you might have used it to pay for a stick of gum. And yet, this one mistake of history turned that little copper disc into a life-changing fortune. The story begins in 1942. America was deep in World War II. Factories were roaring, soldiers were shipping off overseas, and the U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure. Copper was desperately needed for ammunition and war equipment. Every fraction of a pound mattered. The Mint had already begun experimenting with alternative metals for pennies, and chaos was brewing inside the coin presses. Most people have no idea how wild those years were for coin production. Dies cracked, machines jammed, and the tiniest slip could create an error so rare that decades later it would be worth millions. And one of those slips gave birth to the 1942 no mint mark wheat penny, the one that would rewrite coin collecting history. Collectors were shocked when it surfaced. At first glance, it looks just like every other Lincoln wheat penny. The familiar wheat stalks on the back, Lincoln's profile on the front. Nothing unusual, right? But then someone noticed. No mint mark. No tiny D for Denver. No S for San Francisco. Nothing. Just a blank space. Now here's the chilling part. That tiny missing detail is exactly what makes this coin priceless. You see, in 1942, the Philadelphia Mint produced coins without mint marks, but not like this. Certain experimental dies and metal planchets slipped through the cracks, creating pennies that were never supposed to exist. And because only a handful survived, they became the holy grail of wartime coinage. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One of these 1942 no-mint mark pennies showed up at auction. Bidding started modestly, with a few seasoned collectors raising their paddles. But then the whispers spread through the room. "This is one of those coins." The bids climbed higher and higher, past 50,000, past 100,000, and then into the stratosphere. By the time the hammer fell, the price tag had reached $1.8 million. Dealers couldn't believe it. Imagine a penny that once jingled in someone's pocket, suddenly transformed into $1 million miracle. Newspapers covered it, collectors scrambled to recheck their stashes, and ordinary people across the country began turning out their jars of wheat pennies, hoping lightning might strike twice. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Not all 1942 pennies are worth that much. Most are only worth a few cents, maybe a couple dollars in pristine condition. The secret lies in the details. Look closely at your penny. On the obverse, just below the year, is where the mint mark should appear. If it's blank, no D, no S, that's your first clue. Next, examine the coin's weight and color. Certain surviving 1942 no-mint mark pennies have slightly different metal compositions due to the mint's wartime experiments. Some look a bit darker, some strike sharper than others. These subtle signs could mean the difference between pocket change and a fortune. And here's the twist that most people miss. Because so many pennies from the 1940s were hoarded during the war, there are still jars and boxes of them hiding in attics, basements, and old dresser drawers. One man discovered his $1 million penny when he was cleaning out his late grandfather's cigar box. Another found one mixed in with a handful of coins at a flea market. Everyday people, not professional collectors, have stumbled onto these treasures by sheer luck. Holding a coin you thought was worthless, only to discover it could pay off your mortgage, buy your dream car, or even secure your retirement. That's the thrill that drives collectors. The idea that history, luck, and fortune can collide in the palm of your hand. So here's what you need to do. If you own any wheat pennies, pull them out and start checking. Look at every 1942. Inspect the date. Check for that missing mint mark. Look for signs of unusual striking or strange coloration. Don't dismiss a penny just because it looks ordinary. The ordinary ones are the most dangerous, because that's how $1 million miracles hide in plain sight. Collectors are still hunting. Dealers are still watching. And with values soaring higher than ever, the next incredible discovery could be yours.